everyone, I don't know if you've heard this, but the Bible Society have just released some very encouraging statistics in regards to the UK church. According to their statistics, church attendance across the UK is on the rise. Now, that might sound a bit confusing because in the last census just that we had in 2021, it's telling us that less people identifying as Christians. But that's okay because these are people who are choosing not to tick the box as a Christian because they weren't Christians in the first place. They were just probably christened, maybe raised with church, but they don't go to church anymore. But church attendance is on the rise. That's telling me that God is doing something. I always say it takes a miracle to get someone to church on a Sunday. Now, I know that not everybody in church on a Sunday is a born-again believer, but I think across evangelical churches on any given Sunday, the majority of people in church will be believers. Now, what's also really encouraging about this statistic is the age group that is increasing in the sense of going to church on a Sunday. They said church attendance among Gen Z is increasing, and Gen Z is really going from teenagers right up to mid to sort of late 20s. Now, that is really encouraging because that's an age group that the church has always struggled to keep or to really see come into church. And if I want to encourage you even more, they're seeing a rise in men among Gen Z coming to church. They're seeing a rise in young men coming to church. And I've seen this, I've witnessed this. I've seen people turn up at church who were raised in church, they were nominal, it didn't really, it was their parents' thing, they were just sort of ticking the boxes, and all of a sudden they're like, I've had an encounter with Jesus, I believe this is real, I want to get baptized, I want to follow Jesus Christ. I've seen other people that weren't raised in church, young men that were raised in the world and they've lived an ungodly life, and they're turning up at church and they're saying, I want to follow Jesus, someone's told me the gospel, I believe this, I want to get baptized. How encouraging is that? Young men denying themselves and wanting to take up their cross and follow Jesus Christ. Does that sound familiar? Young men denying themselves, wanting to take up their cross to follow Jesus Christ. That sounds like the early church to me. That sounds like the first disciples. So let's be encouraged. We hear a lot of negativity. There's a real bias in the UK media. They don't want to report about persecuted Christians. We know that there seems to be like a restriction on freedom of speech. There's sort of news reports of people being persecuted for street preaching. But in the background, God is doing something. They're actually calling this statistic a quiet revival. A quiet revival. You know, we may see the darkness, but there is light. It may look small, it may look unimpressive, it may look slow, but that's how the kingdom of God works. It started as a mustard seed, and we know what it turns into. So let's be praying for the UK church. Let's be praying for the lost, and let's be bold. Let's be going out there, sharing our faith, even with people that may seem most unlikely to respond. Young men even, because you just don't know what God is doing behind the scenes.